we've got a genie-like patron, which makes just tons of sense.
So the genie was one of the subclasses over the last year that appeared twice in Unearthed Arcana. The first time we got a lot of feedback, fans were clear, they want to see more of it. And so we dug into it further and realized that we'd gone far enough in our iterative game development work that we wanted to send it back out for more feedback. Well, the genie that we sent out in that second round was received so well, and the satisfaction scores were so high that what is in the book is extremely close to what was in that Unearthed Arcana. So in many ways, if people want a super solid preview of the genie in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, all they have to do is go to that revised genie patron in Unearthed Arcana. And even though there are going to be some changes, the skeleton that you see there is present in the book. And that was a great example of our process where we're in conversation with the community, really resulting in not only a solid piece of design, but something that the community will be able to see in the book and sort of tell themselves, we were a part of this. Our feedback helped create this genie patron that is now part of the game.
Does it still have kind of that limited wish that also that object that you can kind of have your own? It's almost like a super enhanced, luxurious, tiny hut.
Yeah, you still get to chill out inside your bottle or whatever the vessel is that you have. Where you basically get to feel like the genie and take naps inside that magic lamp, or again whatever other kind of vessel you've decided to use. And also, it still has this. The subclass still has this association with the different types of genies. So you will pick, are you associated with the Tao? Or are you associated with a merit or a genie or an Afriti? And then that determines some of the details in the subclass for you. So again, all of that was there in that revised version of the subclass is here now in the final version of the book.
It's very customizable. How do you imagine that relationship? Because these are what I like about these two new warlocks is that relationship is very unique. Again, with the Fathomless, we have this thing that becomes very present by your actions alone. But you almost live in an artifact of your patrons in many ways. There's I don't know if intimacy is the word, but there's a lot more connective tissue, I would say, with these two patrons.
That design evolution in how we design warlock patrons is also another great example of a design change inspired by what we see and hear in the D&D community. Because one thing that has been very clear ever since 5th edition came out is that people who love warlocks really love exploring not only the relationship with their patron, but who their patron is. And that interest in the community has resulted in our warlock design in a way becoming more concrete. In our original Player's Handbook patron design, we intentionally made the patrons pretty remote. Like the abilities you get sort of distantly echo abilities the patron might have, but we wanted warlocks to truly feel like they had the freedom to decide how they're going to use these powers, what it means that they have this connection to a patron. We essentially didn't want to tie their hands creatively too much. We still have that as a goal. We still want to make sure warlocks have room for play, as I mentioned earlier. But at the same time, we also have seen that warlock players are happy if we push things a little more in the direction of the patron feeling like a concrete thing and not just sort of a name right on their character sheet and a distant thing. I want a little more evidence of the patron's existence, whether that's in the case of the fathomless, tentacles or
Hmm.
claws that you might even imagine are literally parts of your patron, or in the case of if you have a genie patron, you might have received that vessel directly from your patron. And so in which case you are walking
Hmm.
around with a physical object that your patron gave to you. I mean, and that's so two different ways of us exploring this idea of increased concreteness, of really feeling like this patron is real. I see this in some ways as warlock players not only loving the class's narrative, but also really seeking for the warlock to be pushed a little further away from the cleric than they were in the player's handbook. Because in the player's handbook, even
Hmm.
two classes have very different stories. They have different class features, different spell lists. I mean, there's many, 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 many differences between clerics and warlocks. But if you sort of pan the camera back and look at the two of them, there is a commonality in that each of these classes has a relationship with an otherworldly entity of some kind. And the main way we've distinguished between the two is clerics serve gods, whereas warlocks uh, form pacts with a variety of different entities, some of which may even be gods themselves, but warlocks don't necessarily serve their patrons the way clerics are very much the devotees of
Hmm.
their god and serve that god's purposes in the world. Again, I think people not only love that distinction, but they want the distinction highlighted even further. Of a warlock's patron can be more concrete than a god typically is. Gods in D&D, while their influence in the multiverse is certainly real, the gods still tend to be pretty remote. They are such powerful cosmic beings that maybe once in a campaign, you'll climb the heights of Mount Celestia and maybe catch a glimpse of the toe of your god. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Right.
and even then, you're probably only seeing an avatar of your god and not actually the god's true form, because what we sometimes say is that if you saw your god's true form in D&D, you're likely to be incinerated, or you are likely to instantly transcend out of your mortal form and are never seen again as you enter into the strange domain that the gods dwell in. Uh, Whereas, again, in contrast, many of the patrons whom warlocks create pacts with, including now the Fathomless and the Genie, are beings that could show up, and not just as avatars, but like the actual entity uh,
Hmm.
is right there. And sometimes that would be a great thing. Other times it would be absolutely horrifying, because with a cleric, you can imagine a cleric dreaming of their god, of seeing their god eventually face to face. Most likely it's after death, and they just want to hear from their god, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's sort of the typical cleric's main goal. Whereas the warlock, it's sort of like, oh boy, I hope the boss doesn't show up. They're
Yeah.
going
It's,
to find out what I've been doing with the powers they gave me. Or other warlocks might actually be buddies with their patron, but don't have any sense of subservience to them. And maybe they hang out with them or they fight with them. Uh, Again, it's a really interesting relationship that can manifest in so many different ways.
I love that stuff. It's when I look at like John Constantine comic and even the cartoon show, the movies they've been making in the series. That's the type of stuff I really enjoy, is that back and forth with this person who's not really trying to do good and not really trying to do evil. They're just kind of out for themselves and having these conversations with devils and angels and talking on that level. That is kind of like what I love the most about warlocks, and the summoning weird creatures. I'm particularly fallen in love with summoning, especially with the new spells that are out in this new book. I'm in love with the idea of every one of the summoning spells having a personality. It's the same thing you keep on the same person, the same individual that you keep on like calling to your aid. So I've been experimenting with that role play as a warlock a little bit.
Pre-order Tasha's Cauldron of Everything on D&D Beyond and unlock exclusive pre-order rewards, including digital dice.